When our vegetarian ancestors started eating meat around 2 million years ago, it wasn't just because animals taste great, it was pure necessity. Climate change made many of the plants our ancestors relied on less available, and meat bridged that gap. From the discovery of fire at the latest, meat became a staple of the human diet. But over the last few years, eating meat has increasingly been associated with health risks like heart disease, certain cancers, and an early death. So, how unhealthy is meat really?
Bit quiet, sorry. It's a bit off.
In this video, we'll only talk about meat. Dairy products deserve a video of their own. Biologically, we need to eat for 3 reasons. For energy, to acquire materials to fabricate our
That was the worst Austrian accent.
cells, and to get special molecules that our bodies can't make themselves. The energy and most of the materials come from the 3 macronutrients: fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. Proteins are the most important resource for repairing and replenishing our cell structures. The special molecules are a large variety of vitamins and minerals we need to drive metabolic processes. Meat provides us with most of these things. It contains all essential amino acids our body needs and a lot of minerals like iron, zinc, and essential vitamins, some of which are barely found in plants like vitamin B12. Only one essential nutrient is missing in most of the meat we consume: vitamin C. It appears in almost all plants and supports our immune system as well as the development of connective tissues. After a few months without it, you'd get scurvy. But meat has another big advantage: its high bioavailability. Some of the nutrients in meat are broken down faster and available quicker than those from plants. Spinach, for example, contains more iron than meat, but it's absorbed much slower and the body needs more energy to digest it. Several health benefits have also been observed in communities that rely solely on meat. The Inuit, for example, are able to survive in extreme climate conditions on a purely meat-based diet.
I should weigh in. I am a meat eater, but I have tried to be vegetarian. I don't like the idea of eating animals. Unfortunately, we've evolved to do so, you know. It's kind of, if you look at life on this planet, it's all kind of evolved to get energy from eating other life, unfortunately. And unfortunately, a lot of the energy is just other animals and life, which is annoying. I don't want to eat other things, but so it's going to be a real problem if we find out, you know, plants are sentient. Hey, but look, I do think morally superior people wouldn't eat animals, at least intelligent animals. I feel like I want to include all animals in that.
If necessary. Since they consume the whole animal, including the organs, they get every single nutrient they need, including vitamin C. So meat itself is definitely not dangerous for us, but its health effects vary depending on how it's prepared and what animal it comes from. When talking about meat in the Western world,
I think it's important to remember, though, it's like we don't know everything there is to know about the human body. For instance, I just was reading, like, yesterday that New Scientist put up some science, which we've just found a new area in the brain, a new process in the brain for waste disposal. We didn't even know about this. And it's remarkable. I was talking to a Nelly doctor about it, and they couldn't believe in which, you know, the way they're taught this stuff in medical school about how we kind of like know everything. You know, we know all these things and there's very little left. We're finding these whole new processes constantly in the brain, right? Go talk to psychologists or neuroscientists. They'll make it sound like we know these things for sure. We know very little. So be careful. I was trying to say here, like meat. How do we know that, for instance, Alzheimer's or things like this aren't caused potentially by eating things like meat? We don't know. I'm not suggesting that it is either, but I just think there are potential complications. Who knows if meat actually is those tau proteins. Some have suggested that it could be causing the tau protein buildup
in muscle tissues that have a high nutrient
it's gonna be all right, guys.
Density, but also lack some of the vitamins that make it possible to survive on meat alone. The most healthy animals to eat are probably fish. Fish contains polyunsaturated fatty acids like omega-3, which may lower the risk of cardiovascular diseases and support anti-inflammatory immune functions. As part of a balanced diet, fish can be
Got that omega-3 as well. There's lots of little things we could say here. I'm sure you guys know a lot of this stuff, but just chipping in, things you might not know.
eaten regularly without worries. Eating fish comes with its own bag of complications though, like overfishing and the destruction of the oceans. We'll talk about that in another video. A close second is the most popular meat, chicken. It's regarded as the meat with the fewest health risks. The only
Real. That's an interesting study. I'd like to look into this, but it is only 2 people, which is, never a good sign for a study.
negative health effect of poultry is a bit controversial: fat. Its high content of saturated fats is associated with a higher cholesterol level and cardiovascular disease. But this idea has also been criticized by a large number of scientists, arguing high cholesterol levels might be inherited and not caused by nutrition. So, in general, if you want meat and are concerned about your health,
It's always important to remember correlation does not equal causation. There's so many things in the body which we clearly don't quite fully understand, and so we just have these things called risk factors in which, there's correlations with, higher this and higher that means potentially you're at risk of having a diabetes and all these different kinds of things, cardiovascular disease. So I think a lot of people don't actually realize a lot of these things. There's still a lot of uncertainty and mystery and how they're working physiologically. And then this is just talking about like these things which we can actually kind of tackle. It's amazing to think about psychology and how people constantly in today's world are claiming this and this and that and this, and it's like, Jesus, guys, we the science we do on the brain is quite bad. Be careful of what you think you know.
go for chicken. Things start to get problematic with high intakes of red meat like beef, veal, pork, lamb, horse, and goat. A recently published study recommends, for example, a maximum of 23 grams of red meat per day, which is a very small steak per week. However, large-scale meta-analysis studies have shown that eating 100 grams of red meat every day increases the relative risk of diabetes by 19%, of strokes by 11%, and of colorectal cancer by 17%. This sounds alarming, but before we panic, let's have a look at how these studies were conducted. Because this brings us to the second big problem when trying to answer the question of whether meat is unhealthy or not. Most studies that linked health risks to eating red meat were case control studies, which means taking a group of people with a disease and classifying them by their eating habits. The more red meat they consume, the more likely they were to contract certain diseases. The problem is that it's very hard to eliminate other factors. People who eat less meat tend to live a healthier lifestyle in general. They tend to eat more vegetables and fruit and are less likely to smoke and drink alcohol. Most studies try to eliminate these factors, but it's extremely hard to make definitive statements. Things get worse when we look at processed.
So you might be thinking then, well, if it's so complicated to figure these things out, how do we do it? Well, that's where you need to actually go to the, what's happening physiologically, the exact processes. And we figure these out very slowly. There's still so many things that we take, medication, things we eat, things that are happening in the body, which we don't understand the physiology of. Like, I'm being serious here. People really underplay this a lot, particularly when they're getting taught by people. It's very underplayed how sort of many things there are that we don't understand the physiology of. For instance, like, you might have heard some recent family news. There's some diabetic talk, right? And, we also have someone who's just about to be a doctor. And we're talking about the drug metformin. And they were telling us, and they also have a degree in pharmacology, and they were telling us, actually, there's a lot that metformin is doing, but we actually kind of don't know the physiology of how it is actually working most of the time. It's crazy. And then, there's heaps of other drugs as well. You might have heard of a drug called minoxidil, which I'm taking. We also don't really understand the mechanism by which it's functioning. So I think it's important to, to remember. There's still so much to learn.
Meat, though. Processing meat.
So to answer a question like this, I'm not sure we can just yet. We can see the current stuff, but it doesn't mean that it's healthy or not. Like I honestly don't think we currently know.
Certain chemicals by curing, smoking, salting, or fermenting, or in other words, making it delicious. Bacon, ham, salami, sausages, and hot dogs contain chemicals that are harmful for us, like nitrates and nitrites that can damage the DNA in our digestive system and lead to cancer. The WHO reviewed 800 studies over 20 years and concluded that processed meat is strongly linked to an increased risk of colorectal cancer. Each extra 50 grams of processed meat per day increases your relative risk of cancer by 18%. When it comes to cancer risk, processed meat is now in the same category as plutonium, asbestos, and smoking. The WHO highlights that its research
Sorry, say what?
is only about the question of whether or not something causes cancer and not to what extent. But processed meat may also significantly increase the chance of suffering from diabetes, strokes, and coronary heart diseases.
Jesus.
It also makes a difference what sort of life
But
our
again,
meat lived
the
when
studies, correlations,
it was still part
Although there's surely some mechanisms understood how they directly lead to these things. I'm sure. I'm not a doctor. Don't do anything in this area, so please, don't take my word for any of this.
of a living being. It's common to feed large amounts of antibiotics to livestock in order to prevent diseases which can spread antibiotic resistance. Combined, a high consumption of both red and processed meat could increase your chance of premature death by up to 29%. This means if your chance of dying is 3% this year, it's now 4%. This might not sound like a lot, but tiny percentages have a huge impact on societies of millions. They also seem harmless until they affect you.
Just a quick little ad break for the thing that I've created called Cal. So give me 20 seconds. Just made a new kind of VPN, quantum safe. Post-quantum cryptography is the future for the internet. And if you don't want to take my word for it, if this sounds a bit like, oh, what is he talking about? Just go Google this stuff. Come get 7-day free trial of my VPN. I'm building a bunch of stuff as well, so follow along. Follow the journey, my friends. I'm just about to finish this Linux version. There's a Mac and a Windows. It's working beautifully. And so if you want to come support your boy, it would mean the world.
To blame meat alone for bad health would be wrong, though. There is no evidence that the very essence of meat has any negative effect beyond its high fat content, and even this point is highly contentious. Just like with many other pleasures in life, sometimes too much of a good thing is harmful. Most public health agencies suggest cutting meat consumption to 500 grams a week, while studies suggest cutting down processed meat as much as possible. So if you feast on meat no more than once or twice a week, you should be good. For most people, this already means a drastic change in their diets, though. The average American consumes around almost 1,600 grams of meat a week. The average German, 1,100 grams a week. And many of us eat much, much more. If you're not really sure, make a small note whenever you eat meat for a week or two. You'll be surprised how much it really is. So most people watching this video would benefit from cutting down on meat. Aside from health concerns, there's still the fact that the meat industry is one of the largest contributors to climate change and has reached a scale where it's impossible to deliver millions of tons of meat and still treat animals with dignity. We've already discussed that in detail in another video. All in all, in moderation, meat is not unhealthy, and you don't need to become vegetarian overnight to have a real impact on your health and the planet. But your lifestyle choices do matter, for yourself and for others.
Indeed. And I'm not going to talk about the climate change implications because we do that in other videos, but yes, that is a big problem.